We did it! After weeks of analysis, after thousands of hours of computing, after collaboration between dozens of institutions across the world, we finally cracked it. The 3I, Atlas radio signal, the mysterious transmission that has haunted scientists for months, has been decoded. And what we found inside changed everything we thought we understood about this object, about first contact, and about humanity's place in the universe. Let's start from the beginning. When the signal was first detected, it appeared almost like noise, an erratic burst of radio energy that repeated every few seconds. But something was off. The intervals were too consistent, the frequencies too deliberate, the symmetry too precise. It wasn't random. There was order hidden beneath the chaos. At first, researchers tried to translate it as if it were a language assigning tones to letters, patterns to syllables, but nothing made sense. It wasn't until a collaboration formed between the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy in Germany and the mathematics department at MIT that everything shifted. They decided to stop looking for words and start looking for logic. What if this wasn't a message written in speech, but a message written in mathematics? The idea was simple, but revolutionary. Mathematics, after all, is universal. No matter what galaxy, what biology, or what language, prime numbers, ratios, and physical constants remain the same. If a civilization wanted to communicate across the void, they would use the language of the cosmos itself, numbers. That's when the pattern began to reveal itself. The transmission contained a sequence of exactly 37 pulses. 37, a prime number. And not just any prime, but the 12th in the sequence of all primes. It couldn't be a coincidence. Prime numbers have long been proposed by SETI as the most likely form of interstellar greeting. Their indivisibility represents a shared understanding of logic, a basic fingerprint of intelligence. But why 37? Why the 12th prime? The team began to suspect the number itself carried meaning. Perhaps it pointed to something, an order, a rank, or a degree of measurement beyond our current comprehension. They ran simulations, converted the sequence into binary, then into ratios. What they found stunned everyone. The time between each pulse, 2.1 seconds, matched exactly the oscillation period of the hydrogen radiation line at 1,420 megahertz. Hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe, is the reference frequency for almost all cosmic communication. The signal was literally built on the universal heartbeat of the cosmos. 2.1 seconds corresponded to roughly 3 billion hydrogen cycles. The gap between each pulse was 15.7 seconds, or 22.4 billion cycles. At first, the numbers seemed arbitrary, but when plotted as a ratio, the result was 7e7 multiplied by Euler's constant. The probability of that occurring by accident was infinitesimal. And more shockingly, 7e translates when scaled to astronomical time to roughly 7.5 billion years, the age of Earth when multicellular life first emerged. This couldn't be random. The signal wasn't just mathematical, it was biographical. It was referencing the timeline of life on Earth. Dr. Elena Vasquez at MIT was the first to point it out. "This isn't just a call sign," she said during the press briefing. "It's a mirror. They are showing us they know our story." Further decoding revealed even deeper layers. The variation in frequency across each pulse corresponded to known physical constants. The fine structure constant, the electron to proton mass ratio, and even the ratio between the electromagnetic and gravitational forces. These constants define the conditions for life in the universe. Whoever sent this message understood the fundamental architecture of reality itself. Then came the most astonishing discovery. When Dr. Michael Chen at Caltech mapped the amplitude variations, the subtle rise and fall of energy in each pulse, he reconstructed a three-dimensional image. What appeared was a map, a section of the Milky Way, roughly 5,000 light-years wide. Within it were 12 G-type star systems, stars similar to our Sun, each surrounded by planets that could, in theory, support life. And among those 12, one was unmistakable: Sol. Our Sunday. It was at that moment everyone realized what they were looking at. This wasn't a random transmission, nor a distant broadcast from an anonymous corner of the galaxy. This was a targeted message sent to us. Each of the 12 star systems appeared connected, forming a kind of galactic network. Earth's sun was the 12th point in the pattern, the 12th world. The prime number, the ratios, the encoded constants, they all aligned. Earth had been cataloged. We were one of 12. When the map was overlaid with known astronomical data, the pattern matched precisely. Every coordinate was real. Every system existed. All of them within a radius of 5,000 light years. All stable, all habitable. The conclusion was undeniable. 3I Atlas was not merely observing the solar system. It was part of something far greater, an interstellar survey, a census of life-bearing worlds. And that meant only one thing: we were not alone. The decoded timeline within the message left no room for misunderstanding. It chronicled the evolution of Earth itself, from the first microbial life 3.8 billion years ago, to photosynthesis 2.4 billion years ago, to the Cambrian explosion 500 million years ago, the extinction of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, the rise of Homo sapiens 300,000 years ago, and finally, a single date written in unmistakable precision, 1945. The moment humanity split the atom, the dawn of the nuclear age. That was when, according to the signal, we officially entered their observation. It was as if some distant intelligence had been watching us for eons, recording every milestone, every transformation, and then marked our first nuclear detonation as the threshold that brought us to their attention. It was the point at which we announced ourselves to the cosmos, not with a greeting, but with a flash of fire. The implications were staggering. This wasn't an accidental discovery. The message wasn't an invitation sent blindly into the void. It was a deliberate communiqué from an observer who knew who we were, where we were, and how long we had been here. And then came the part no one could explain. Encoded deep within the final section of the transmission were spatial and temporal coordinates precise to the minute. The location, 1.3 astronomical units from the Sun, slightly off Earth's orbital path. The time, 18 months from now. The scientific community was split. Was it a prediction, a warning, or an appointment? Could this be a rendezvous point? Dr. James Robertson at JPL called it the perfect observation coordinate. Close enough for Earth to monitor, but far enough to remain safe. Others, more cautious, feared it could signal something else entirely. A meeting, a test, or even an arrival. As the data circulated, the world's observatories turned their telescopes toward that point in the sky. Quietly, without public announcement, the countdown had begun. Because if the message was genuine, and every calculation suggested that it was, then something extraordinary would happen there 18 months from now. And for the first time in human history, the possibility of true contact was no longer science fiction. It was scheduled. In the days following the decoding announcement, the world changed in ways no one had predicted. Governments scrambled, institutions issued cautious statements, and for the first time in decades, Every major observatory on Earth and in orbit pointed to the same patch of sky. What had once been a fragmented scientific effort was suddenly a global obsession. The phrase 18 months became a quiet refrain on the lips of scientists, journalists, and ordinary people alike. It wasn't a conspiracy theory anymore. It was data, pure and verifiable. NASA confirmed that the signal contained not just random information, but measurable constants and temporal coordinates consistent with a message constructed by intelligence. Yet they refused to speculate on its intent. "We are observing, analyzing, and coordinating," said the official statement. Nothing more. No claims of contact, no declarations of alien life, only the acknowledgement that something beyond Earth had spoken. Behind closed doors, however, the tone was different. Meetings between astrophysicists, intelligence officials, and defense agencies were held under the highest levels of secrecy. Some argued that humanity should respond immediately to show that we were ready for dialogue. Others warned that replying could expose us, our technology, our vulnerabilities, even our location to an unknown force. There were those who whispered of danger and those who dreamed of transcendence. Meanwhile, at the scientific level, the message was being dissected piece by piece. The sequence of 37 pulses wasn't merely a mathematical code, it was a multi-dimensional structure. The more it was analyzed, the more it seemed to behave like a layered data system, as if multiple messages were superimposed on top of each other, each revealed only after certain frequencies were decoded. One layer mapped the galaxy, another encoded the timeline of life, a third, barely understood, seemed to describe laws of energy transfer, patterns that hinted at propulsion or communication physics beyond human comprehension. Dr. Elena Vasquez described it as a cosmic textbook compressed into a heartbeat. She wasn't exaggerating. The information density was extraordinary, equivalent to hundreds of terabytes compressed into a modulated radio waveform lasting less than 10 minutes. Each amplitude shift, each phase variation carried meaning. It was not the work of chance or natural phenomena. It was design. And design meant intent. That was what unsettled people the most. If 3I Atlas was indeed the source of the transmission, then this wasn't just a rock tumbling through interstellar space. It was an instrument, a probe, a messenger sent across the galaxy with purpose. And if its purpose was to contact Earth, then it had already succeeded. Around the world, philosophical and political debates exploded. Was humanity ready for such an encounter? Who should speak for Earth? The United Nations convened emergency sessions referencing an old but largely symbolic document, the COPUOS Guidelines for Dealing with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. In theory, the UN should coordinate humanity's collective response. In practice, no one knew how. The great powers America, China, Russia, the European Union, India, Japan, each launched their own internal task forces. Officially, they cooperated. Privately, they competed. Intelligence leaks revealed that several nations were developing parallel communication systems capable of transmitting at 1,420 megahertz, the same hydrogen frequency as the signal, just in case the opportunity to respond came. First, to be the first to make contact would mean unimaginable prestige and influence. The balance of global power could change overnight, and yet, amid the geopolitical tension, the deeper question lingered. What did the message mean by 12? The catalog reference, now universally known as Entry 12, implied that Earth was not unique. 11 other star systems were part of this mysterious network. Some of them matched known exoplanetary systems already cataloged by Kepler and Gaia G-type stars with potentially habitable zones. But the alignment was too precise to dismiss. If each world was being observed, then we were one of many. And that realization shook humanity's sense of identity more profoundly than any political conflict ever could. The possibility arose that a civilization, or perhaps a network of civilizations, had been monitoring the evolution of life across the galaxy for billions of years. They had recorded the chemical beginnings, the rise of photosynthesis, the emergence of complex organisms, the dawn of intelligence. They had studied life as one might study physics, methodically, dispassionately, universally. To them, Earth wasn't special. It was a data point. And yet, the tone of the message felt anything but cold. Its structure reflected precision, but also care. The inclusion of our evolutionary timeline, the explicit acknowledgement of our technological threshold, it felt almost ceremonial. As if this communication had been waiting for a specific moment, triggered by a milestone only we could reach ourselves. The moment we became capable of destroying our own planet. That was the paradox. They reached out not when humanity invented the telescope or the radio, but when it invented the bomb. When we gained the power of extinction, we caught their attention. It was as if, in their eyes, technological self-awareness was the true mark of civilization. This idea terrified some and inspired others. Was this message a test? Were we being evaluated not for our intelligence, but for our restraint? Meanwhile, the coordinates embedded in the final section of the signal were analyzed again and again. The location corresponded to a point roughly 1.3 astronomical units from the Sun, trailing slightly behind Earth's orbit. In 18 months, both would align within communication range. Astronomers described it as a gravitationally stable pocket, ideal for an observation or rendezvous. No natural object was currently present there, but that could change. Some believed it was a simple meeting point, an open invitation. Others feared it was something else, a probe's arrival site, or even a launch marker for a larger vessel following in 3I Atlas's path. For now, there was no proof of anything except coordinates, time, and precision. By December, a quiet but undeniable global movement had emerged. Across social networks, people shared countdown timers and live streams of the coordinates. Artists, philosophers, scientists, and believers all began to interpret the message in their own way. Some saw it as divine revelation, others as the beginning of a scientific renaissance. But in government corridors, fear dominated. If something or someone was coming, humanity needed to be ready. Space agencies began simulating potential responses. Could we send a spacecraft to the rendezvous point within 18 months? Technically possible, but extremely difficult. Could we detect an object approaching the coordinates before then? Perhaps. But even with the James Webb and the upcoming next-generation radio arrays, detecting something that didn't want to be seen was nearly impossible. Still, preparations began. NASA, ESA, CNSA, and Roscosmos secretly agreed to form a temporary data-sharing alliance called Horizon 12. The goal? To maintain real-time surveillance of the coordinates and monitor any anomalous movements near the predicted point. The public didn't know about it, at least not yet, but within the scientific community, it became an open secret. For the first time since the Cold War, all of humanity's eyes were fixed on the same patch of empty space. And as the months passed, strange things began to happen. Minor fluctuations in the hydrogen frequency, barely measurable, were detected across multiple observatories. A pulse here, an echo there. Some dismissed it as interference. Others whispered that it was a reply. No one could say for sure, but one thing was clear. Whatever 3-eye Atlas was, it hadn't finished speaking. The decoded message had ended with a simple truth. We have been watching. We are ready for the next step. What that next step meant remained a mystery. But for the first time in history, humanity had a date, a place, and a reason to look beyond its own world, not out of curiosity alone, but out of necessity. The countdown to contact had begun. 17 months remained until the appointed moment, and the world had entered an age of quiet anticipation. Every major space agency, every university observatory, every classified research facility was focused on one question: what would happen when the clock reached 0? Humanity had never faced a deadline that felt so cosmic, so irreversible. There was no blueprint for this, no precedent. We were writing history in real time. In the scientific community, the effort became the most ambitious collaboration in modern history. Physicists, mathematicians, linguists, and philosophers worked side by side, reanalyzing every bit of the decoded transmission. Theories multiplied. Some suggested the coordinates marked a simple observational test, a calibration point for their instruments. Others believed it was an invitation, a meeting between two species separated by the stars. A few feared it might be a judgment, the moment they decided whether humanity was worthy of inclusion or best left alone. What everyone agreed on was that the signal was real, deliberate, and intelligent. The structure of its mathematics proved that beyond all doubt. The fine structure constant, the hydrogen frequency, the galactic coordinates, they all aligned perfectly. And the timeline of Earth's evolution could only have come from direct observation. Whoever sent it had been watching for longer than our species had existed. At the United Nations, a special commission called the Global Response Assembly was formed. Its mission to coordinate humanity's collective answer should contact occur. Delegates from 196 countries attended, but agreement was elusive. Some nations demanded an immediate response, a message of peace and readiness to engage. Others warned that transmitting a reply might expose Earth's exact technological capacity. The debate was fierce and endless. Could we risk speaking first? Could we risk staying silent? Meanwhile, intelligence agencies modeled every possible scenario. What if a physical object appeared at the rendezvous point? What if it entered Earth's orbit? What if it broadcast another signal? Each scenario had a different chain of global consequences. Military planners worried about panic. Economists worried about collapse. But the scientists were united in awe. For them, this was not a threat. It was the greatest discovery in the history of civilization. As the months passed, a strange shift occurred in human behavior. Religions adapted, politicians hesitated, and the general public grew quiet. The news cycle slowed. Art, literature, and science merged into one shared conversation. Humanity, for the first time, was looking outward together. Then, about 4 months after the decoding, a new piece of the puzzle emerged. Dr. Michael Chen's team at Caltech identified faint modulations buried deep within the signal's low-frequency range. When amplified and plotted in 3 dimensions, they formed wave patterns that resembled the magnetic field lines of 12 interconnected star systems. The same 12 from the galactic map, but one of them, the 12th, was pulsing differently. The waveform corresponded to Earth's hydrogen line signature, slightly distorted, as if it had been copied, studied, and reflected back. They were mirroring us. This discovery reignited the debate about intent. Was this a gesture of communication, like holding up a mirror to show understanding? Or was it an indication that they were already synchronized with our transmissions, monitoring every broadcast, every radar ping, every signal that had escaped into the void since the dawn of radio. The message suddenly felt less like an invitation and more like a status report, an acknowledgement that the survey was complete. We had reached a level of technology that made us visible. And now, perhaps, they were preparing to make themselves visible too. The possibility of a physical arrival became impossible to ignore. Space agencies began drafting plans for unmanned probes that could reach the designated coordinates. NASA proposed a modified solar sailcraft that could arrive in 15 months, while China's CNSA developed a nuclear thermal prototype designed to accelerate rapidly enough to intercept any object entering that region. ESA and Roscosmos jointly launched Project Horizon, a coordinated observation network linking every major telescope from Chile to Hawaii to the Canary Islands. Still, there was no sign of anything unusual, no approaching object, no anomalies. The patch of sky remained empty, yet the hydrogen frequency background showed subtle fluctuations every few weeks, like ripples on still water. Something was stirring. In March, a classified memo from JPL leaked to the press. It contained a chilling summary. Signal analysis confirms embedded timecode consistent with human temporal calibration. Transmission likely generated within 0.4 AU of Earth's current position at time of reception. In simpler terms, the message might not have traveled across light years. It might have been sent locally from within the solar system. The revelation shook the world. If 3I, Atlas, had transmitted this signal itself, then the sender wasn't light years away, it was already here. The probe was still active, possibly still observing us, possibly awaiting our reply. For weeks, speculation dominated every conversation. Was Atlas autonomous, acting on pre-programmed instructions from a civilization thousands of years older than ours? Or was it a self-aware entity, capable of adapting, learning, even deciding? No one knew. But if the decoded coordinates were correct, in just over a year, something was going to happen. Then came the interpretation that changed everything. When all data layers of the signal were merged, mathematical, physical, and spatial, a linguistic pattern appeared. It wasn't human language, but when translated into symbolic logic, it formed a coherent statement. We are an autonomous probe. We survey and record habitable worlds. You are the 12th world in our network. You have reached technological maturity. Observation will conclude in 18 of your months. At that time, presence will be established. Presence will be established. The phrase spread like wildfire. Scientists debated its translation endlessly. Did presence mean communication, physical arrival, or something else entirely? Regardless of interpretation, it confirmed what many already believed. The countdown wasn't metaphorical. It was literal. The world entered a new stage of awareness. Schools taught astronomy. Artists painted the night sky. Religions reinterpreted ancient texts. Nations discussed unification. The fear that had once divided humanity began to soften, replaced by an almost sacred curiosity. But beneath the surface, governments still prepared. Satellites were repositioned, defense systems tested, contingencies drafted. Humanity was preparing for contact with open eyes and cautious hearts. As the 17th month began, global observatories coordinated a synchronized observation of the designated coordinates. For the first time in history, every telescope on Earth looked at the same point in the sky at the same time. The data streamed in. No object appeared, no light flared. Just the black silence of space. And yet, The instruments recorded something subtle, a rise in background radio energy, perfectly aligned with the hydrogen frequency. It was as if the cosmos itself had inhaled. Then the signal stabilized into a continuous tone, steady, precise, unwavering. It carried no message this time, no pattern, no code, just a single, pure frequency resonating through every receiver on Earth. The scientists called it the line. It lasted for 11 minutes. Then it vanished. In the silence that followed, humanity understood something profound. Whether a meeting was imminent or centuries away, the bridge between worlds had already been built. We were no longer alone, and we never had been. The final words of the original decoded message echoed across every news broadcast, every classroom, every heart. How you respond will determine the next step. We have watched, now we wait. The countdown continued, but this time humanity wasn't afraid. The sky was no longer just stars and void, it was a mirror. And in that reflection, we finally saw ourselves,